So this is part 2 of your lecture 1 for week 2. So this time we're going to talk about the approach, method, and technique. So as you can see here, your approach is the broadest part of your teaching. You also have your method, which is between approach and technique, which is the most specific. So you have different approaches. This is very general. You also have methods, but the technique is how your professor or your teacher deals with you specifically. Okay, so how does a teacher conduct themselves? How does a teacher communicate with the students? You call that technique. So it's different from teacher to teacher, but when you talk about approach, it could be similar, meaning 5 teachers could have a similar approach, but all 5 of them do not have a similar technique, or they have different techniques. Okay, so let's discuss them one by one. So approach is a way in which you try to engage students with the subject matter. You have to provide students with basic facts, relate new knowledge to what students already know, build interaction, be passionate, and be enthusiastic. So this is basically how you present yourself or your general presentation to your students. Okay, so a description of your approach to teaching includes the mode or manner of teaching. So are you giving lectures, tutorials? Are you giving bedside teachings or laboratory work? Some understanding of how people learn. So the learning theories that you can facilitate or you can use in the classroom. And some understanding of how to facilitate learning. Okay, so qualities of a teacher such as passion, principles for good teaching practice, such as providing timely and constructive feedback. So if you give an answer to the question posted, does the teacher give you feedback? And then putting educational theory into practice. Okay? Okay, so you have also types of teaching approach according to the role of the teacher. So the teacher could be an executive. Okay, so it views the teacher as a manager of a complex classroom process. So it is a person charged with bringing about certain outcomes with students through using the best skills and techniques available. So basically, you view the teacher as a boss. Next, you have a facilitator. It places a high value on what students bring to the classroom setting. So instead of telling the students what to do, you are guiding them. Okay, so they want to do this, you're going to tell them how to do that. Okay, you value a lot of what students bring to the classroom setting. Okay, so it allows the students to show their experience, to show their skills, and for the teacher to enhance that skill. So that would be a facilitator. Next is your liberationist, which is rooted in liberal education, wherein the goal is to liberate the mind to wander. Meaning you're giving them prompts, you're giving them stimuli to stimulate their mind, to think of something new, to wonder, to ask questions, to understand, imagine, and create using the full intellectual inheritance of civilized life. So basically meaning you're imagining things and incorporating that in your learning. Okay, so according to the nature of learning naman, so you have your teaching approaches earlier according to the type of teacher or the nature of teaching or the role of the teacher. This time, the nature of learning. You can have discovery learning. Okay, so it takes place in problem-solving situations where the learner draws from his or her own experience and prior knowledge. You have your conceptual learning, which involves the learning of specific concepts, the nature of concepts, and the development of logical reasoning and critical thinking. You have your process writing, which treats all writing as a creative act, which requires time and positive feedback to be done well. So basically, you're writing your thoughts, you're writing about a topic, and you receive a feedback about what you wrote. Next is the unified teaching. This approach lends itself smoothly to unified teaching, learning concept of education. The information handler being a teacher, a student, or another educational environment. It is the center of this educational model, and the main inherent characteristic of this model is extreme flexibility. integration, ease of interaction, and being evolutional. So when you say unified teaching, you're using all the different resources around you. You're using your environment. You're getting information from your teacher, from your classmates, and from everywhere else. That's very flexible. It's very integrated, and you have interaction with all the components of the learning or the teaching process. So you have an interaction with the teacher, with the environment, and so on and so forth. Okay? Okay, so discovery is... Okay, let's discuss them one by one. Discovery refers to various instructional design models that engages students in learning through discovery. So basically, when you discover things, you learn something new. Okay. So in discovery, it's an approach which capitalizes on the child's natural curiosity and urge to explore the environment. So basically, you're put in a field, you're put in a room, and this is very common in kindergarten, where they're put in a room that has many different materials, and they can interact with that environment without prior experience, and then later on they gain experience and make it more vivid. Okay, next is conceptual. So conceptual is choosing and defining the content of a certain discipline to be taught through the use of pervasive ideas, as against the traditional practice of determining content by isolated topics. So all of those tiresome definition. So all you need to know about conceptual is giving them thoughts and giving them ideas that are not usual or not traditional, and then allowing them to process that idea. So it says here, not a particular teaching method with specific steps to follow, because you're just giving them facts and you're trying to induce what they view or how they view those facts. Okay, so each and every one of your students are going to have a different view, so that would be conceptual. You're allowing them to conceptualize or to process information into their own belief system. Okay, it involves more data collection, usually through research, while the discovery approach actively involves students to undertake experimental and investigative work. So usually you just give them concepts, you allow them to research, as opposed to having your students perform actual work. Okay, so choosing and defining the content of a certain discipline to be taught through the use of or pervasive ideas, as against traditional practice. Like I mentioned earlier, you're going to induce a thought, and then you're going to allow your students to process and conceptualize that idea. Next is a process. It's an approach which provides students with an abundance of projects, activities, and instructional designs that allow them to make decisions and solve problems. So basically, you're giving them something to do. You're giving them assignments, projects that they could use, or rather, that they could apply what they learned on. Okay? So that would be a process. As opposed to just teaching them theoretical things, you're going to allow them to apply the theory that you have taught them. Last is the unified. So it's based on a breakdown of knowledge to integrate modules of information. So the basic level of the breakdown is to be used in educational build-up concepts, while the higher ones are to be used to build up complex concepts of knowledge. So basically, you're integrating your environment, you're integrating all of the different resources, all of the different possible sources of information into one unified nature of learning and teaching. Okay, so this approach lends itself smoothly to a unified teaching learning concept of education, meaning you're not only sourcing the information from the teacher, you're also using the thoughts of the students, what your environment can teach, and all the different available material that everyone can use to facilitate learning. Okay, so it's not just the teacher, it's not just the student, it's a combination of both, and the different things around them that they can use for learning. So that would be unified learning. That's why you call it unified. It's because it involves everything around you. You learn from everything and everyone. Okay, so you also have approaches according to teacher-learner interaction. You have your teacher-centered approach and your student-centered approach. So starting with the teacher-centered approach, you have three different kinds. You have your formal authority, expert authority, and personal model, which later we're going to discuss. You also have your inquiry-based learning, where you are the facilitator. You can be a personal model or a delegator. And you have your cooperative learning as the facilitator or the delegator. Later, we're going to discuss these different terms for you to understand better. Okay, so starting with the teacher-centered approach, it is the primary role of teachers to pass knowledge and information to their students. So I as your teacher, my primary role is to guide you to your learning. And then you have your student-centered approach. Student learning is continuously measured during teacher instruction. So that's through your quizzes, your activities, your projects, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you have your teacher-centered approach. Number one, direct instruction. You have three different kinds. You have your formal authority, expert, and your personal model. So basically, when you say direct instruction, it relies on explicit teaching through lectures and teacher-led demonstrations. So basically, learning comes from the teacher. Okay, so you have your formal authority, in which the teachers are in a position of power and authority because of their exemplary knowledge and status over their students. So classroom management styles are traditional, meaning you're seated orderly by number or by alphabet or by boy, girl, and so on and so forth. So basically, you have the teacher as the formal authoritative figure in the classroom. So whatever the teacher says goes. You have also your expert, direct instruction, wherein expert teachers are in possession of all knowledge and expertise within the classroom, and their primary role is to guide and direct learners through the learning process. Okay, so they're going to show you how you can learn that different skills and expertise that the teacher exhibits. Next is your personal model. Personal model teachers are those who operate under a personal model which lead by example. So basically, they're showing you how it is to be done, and their personality is also something that you can use to learn, and that is a personal model. You learn through copying the teacher's process. Okay? Now, let's move on to student-centered approach. Number one is inquiry-based learning. So earlier we have your cooperative learning. Let's first discuss the inquiry-based learning. Okay. Inquiry-based learning focuses on investigation and hands-on learning. Teacher's primary role is that of a facilitator. So instead of giving lectures, the teacher is just simply guiding students what to do, how to do it, and if the student is stuck, then how to move on. Oh, sad. Okay, so providing guidance and support for students to the learning process. Okay, by facilitators place a strong emphasis on teacher-student relationship, operating under an open classroom model. So there is a de-emphasis on teacher instruction, meaning that teachers do not usually tell you what to do, but rather they give you hints on what to do. Okay, so the teacher and the student undergo learning together. Student learning is loosely guided by the teacher, as I mentioned earlier. It is focused on fostering independence, hands-on learning, and exploration. Okay, personal model is very similar with the teacher-based learning or the teacher-centered approach, in which the teacher acts as a personal model. So someone you can idolize and someone you can learn something from just by observing or copying the teacher's process. Next is a delegator. A delegator or teachers act as a resource to students, answering questions and reviewing their progress as needed. Teachers play a passive role, meaning they don't actively teach, they don't actively guide, but rather they let students learn, and whenever the students have questions or difficulties, the delegator's role as a teacher is to act as a resource, to answer those questions and to give them ideas and hints on how to overcome their problems. Okay, so it is to foster a sense of autonomy in the learning process. As opposed to your personal model and facilitator, the goal of a delegator is to allow students to learn by themselves. Okay, so that would be your delegator. Next, student-centered approach, you have your cooperative learning, which emphasizes group work in a strong sense of community. Okay, so under cooperative learning, you can have two types of teaching approaches. You have your facilitator and your delegator. Okay, so you don't have your personal model because that would not facilitate cooperative learning. Okay, so we're done with method. If you're going to recall, you have your three circles, approach being the biggest or the broadest. You have your method. And then lastly, you have your technique. Technique. Okay, this time we're going to discuss method. So method of teaching is directly related to the presentation of the lesson. So this would be your PowerPoint presentation, your audiovisual cues, and so on and so forth. So let's discuss them in depth. Okay, so you have four methods of presenting the subject matter. In this case, we have the visual method, you have your telling method as well, you also have your doing method, and your mental method. So basically, your telling method is lecture, as we are doing right now. I'm giving you a lecture, so I'm telling you about the subject matter. Doing method is giving a project. For example, I'm going to ask you to, hey, guys, I need you to get your brother and sister, or brother or sister, make a video of you teaching them or conditioning them to do something. So that would be doing method. Next is visual method, in which case I would be doing the doing, or the teacher is going to perform the task. As an example earlier, I asked you to get your siblings and then teach them or condition them to do something. In a visual method, I would be the one performing that task. So I would get my brother or sister and I'm going to condition them to do something. Lastly is the mental method, in which case I'm not going to facilitate any of the previous three examples, but instead I'm going to ask you to research. So I'm going to be asking you guys, I need you to research on classical conditioning and then tell me what you think about classical conditioning. So it induces deduction, it induces analysis, it allows you to think and create ideas for yourself. Okay? So that would be your methods of presenting the subject matter. Okay? Techniques is the procedure by which new knowledge fixed in the minds of students permanently. For this purpose, teacher does extra activities in class. So as I mentioned earlier, when you say techniques, this is all about what the teachers have or what the teachers do that is unique to them. Okay, the teacher, which he manifests in the class. Okay, example, the developments of the teaching strategies, giving proper stimulus for timely responses, drilling the learned responses, and increasing the responses by extra activities, and so on. Okay? So some teachers don't like extra activities, some teachers love extra activities. So those are different techniques for different teachers. Okay, instructional media can be used. It encompasses all the materials and physical means an instructor might use to implement instruction and facilitate student learning. So it could be from a videotape, it could be handout, charts, slides, overheads, real objects, film, newer materials, computers, DVDs, CD-ROMs, and so on and so forth. So instructional materials or instructional media are the different media that the teachers can use for you to be able to understand and learn from them. Okay, so instructional media, as mentioned earlier, this is an example of instructional media. You have a PowerPoint presentation. You could also use chalkboards in the classroom. You could use computers. interactive video conferencing like Zoom meetings, and so on and so forth. So why would you use, or why should you use instructional media? Because we have different types of learners. Sometimes learners like learning by their visuals, by seeing what's happening. Some learners like listening. Some learners like a combination of the two, and so on and so forth. So basically, you use instructional media to make learning better. Okay. So, one of the major reasons of using instructional media. Okay. Other examples or other goals of using instructional media include attracting attention. Of course, if you have a attractive PowerPoint presentation, you're going to attract more attention. You also can develop interest, because if you're using, for example, advanced media or advanced technology, then they're going to have an interest in what you're saying. You can also adjust learning and promoting the acceptance of the idea. Okay? Like for example, sometimes students are afraid of, well, having their fingers pricked by a lancet. But when they see their classmates, or when you demonstrate to them that pricking is pretty standard and it doesn't hurt that much, then they're going to also accept the idea that they could also be pricked. Okay, instructional media helps students visualize a lesson and transform abstract concepts into concrete, easier to remember concepts, because instructional media can give you things to associate your theory to. Okay, it's one of the very good techniques of learning and memorizing is to associate something to something you already know. For example, you associate the color blue to colder temperatures. You associate red to warmer temperatures, and so on and so forth. So whenever you see blue, you always assume that it's a cold place. Whenever you see red, you always assume that it's a hot place. Okay, so one of the things that we can solidify or make a concrete example of. You have your types of instructional media. You have your projected media, non-projected, audio, motion, which means videos, hypermedia, and gaming media. So let's discuss them one by one. So projected media is just basically what you're used to. PowerPoint presentations that are presented on the wall. They allow students to view the same material at the same time and offer students other perspectives on the material. So again, slides, film strips, and overheads. You're very used to this when you're very familiar with projected media. Next is non-projected media. It does not require projection, as suggested by the title. This is just basically photographs, diagrams, and displays. So remember in the older times when we used to draw on Manila paper, we used to write our notes on Manila paper and then post them on the wall, and then have it presented. Okay, so this is used to illustrate concepts, enhance direct instruction, and encourage students to look at data in diverse ways. Next is audio media. You can use cassettes and compact discs that can play audio. It allows students to hear languages or dialects. Like for example, you can study language better with audio media as opposed to using PowerPoint slides. You can also encourage creativity through music, and so on and so forth. Next, motion media. So videos, computer-mediated instruction, and television. This is now used to offer supplemental instruction. Like for example, I'm going to make a video of me collecting blood using phlebotomy. So if I have a video of that, it offers supplemental instruction, and you can experience concepts in manner that is not available in real life. This would pertain to animations. Okay, you can also use animations wherein you can show scenarios that are not possible in real life. Next is the hypermedia. So when you say hypermedia, you use networks, softwares, and the internet. So basically a large network of connected computers. And this one is used to offer resources beyond the library. So if your library is local, for example, you have an Antipolo Public Library. If you use hypermedia, then you have resources from all over the world. Okay, so forgive my drawing. I'm not very good at drawing. Okay, so this is Earth. Okay. Next is gaming media. So gaming media basically is computer games. I hope we can use gaming media as one of our mediums for instruction. So I'm going to be thinking of a way to make a learning experience out of our computer games. Okay, so health education is basically the science that draws from the biological, environmental, psychological, physical, and medical sciences to promote health and prevent disease. Basically, you want to apply this educational theory in the practice of health. Okay, concept of health, basically it means that you are healthy, strong, you have sound mind and body. When you say healthy, a person is healthy, you're not only pertaining to the body, you're also pertaining to the mind. And of course, the spirit. So you have your different dimensions. You have your emotional, social, intellectual, and occupation. So all of those should be sound, meaning that they should be okay, they should be good, before you can call someone as healthy. Definition of health as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, you have the soundness of mind, body or mind, the condition in which it's arduously and efficiently discharged. So you can use your body and you can use your mind efficiently. Aims of health education. Now this would be the this would be the crux of this lecture, is to health promotion and disease prevention, early diagnosis and management, and utilization of available health services. So this is why we educate people. It's because we want to achieve these goals. Okay, so principles of health education, you have credibility. You have to be able to be a trustworthy source of information. Interest. Firstly, we should find the need of the community in order to create interest. Like for example, right now we all need rapid testing or mass testing. So the reason why everyone is so familiar with rapid testing or mass testing or COVID testing or swab testing is because they are interested in these tests. So before we can teach people about a certain test or a certain diagnostic principle, we have to get their interest first. Next is participation. We have to ask the mass, or we have to ask our patients what they want to talk about or what tests they should learn about, and so on and so forth. Okay, next is motivation. Firstly, convey the message in order to change the behavior. So we have to be able to motivate them to invest in their health. We have to be able to tell them that this is a good thing for you, a good action for you, and so on and so forth. Next is comprehension. They have to be able to understand the implications or what the numbers mean, what the tests mean, what the tests do, and so on and so forth. Next is reinforcement. We need to be able to ask them to follow up, or we need to be able to provide supplemental information in case they need to ask questions. Learning by doing, meaning you have to be in practice. Known to unknown starts what knowledge they have up to the knowledge they don't have. We also have to set an example. So as healthcare professionals and as students of medical technology and future doctors, you have to set an example. So as a person who knows, for example, if you see someone smoking, or if you're a medical student, then don't smoke because you know that smoking is bad for your health. good human relations. You have to be able to build rapport with the communities of people. So because if you can interact with communities of people well, then they would also respond to you in a positive manner, meaning that you can suggest things and they're going to be receptive of your ideas. So you have to have good human relations. Number 11, feedback should be given to the community. What changes occur, how many people develop knowledge, and many others. Okay, so in health education, we have to be able to tell the leaders of the community that we have made progress. And of course, you have to have leaders. Okay, need and importance of health education. I'm going to let you think about this one. So again, what kind of learning do you think that is? Would that be conceptual learning? Okay, so basically I'm going to give you the gist of this one. I'm going to act as a facilitator. When you say need and importance of health education, you're basically you want to inform people about health, illness, disability. You want to motivate people to change practices. You want to be able to have an open communication about with healthcare providers and the healthcare receivers for us to be able to facilitate health education and better health for all. Okay, so that's the end of our week 2 lecture. So I hope you learned something new. If you have any questions, you can ask me in our Zoom meeting, or you can also post a question at our question board. Okay, so thank you very much. That's been it. Good luck.